give you advice on how to best structure or restructure your business or your property affairs by fixing the way you're doing business. Anyhow, the underlying topic of this week, as usual, that we continue throughout the week is negative equity and the effects of negative equity on properties and on commercial loans. And obviously, the saying of the week being no problem is real or big enough. Everything is subject to how you treat it. So it's an illusion in some respects. So we must treat our problems as uh, issues that have solutions. So we look at not problems from them being unfixable, the pun, but from the solution behind the problem. So either way, the good thing is proper problems in business come about from everyone and consumed with the problems. And I think Lakhi's flown in from his bedroom. Where are you, Lakhi? Are you at the airport?
I'm available now, yeah.
Available. So you came in from which bedroom airport?
Say again, sorry?
I said you came in from which bedroom airport? Because apparently you just flown in from the bedroom. Is that right? Or are you in the office today?
I'm just trying to get the other guest on and just making sure
You're
that
trying to get them on.
somebody's
Excellent,
in
excellent.
communication
There you
with
are,
them.
Lakhi Singh, fixing the IT and the stream, live stream problems, even though it's not part of his remit, but he's got his fingers everywhere in every pie, which is excellent. And that's the nature of Lakhi Singh, the property fixer or the fixer, wanting to fix all the problems. But did you manage to fix the problem, Lakhi?
Yeah, the problem is that I've got the IT people talking to them.
You got them doing it. Okay, excellent. You got them doing it. Right. Okay, so continuing with the theme of this week, as we said, negative equity, we have exactly a very prominent guest apparently turning up today, who is Mr. Ninder Singh Johal. And he is supposed to be turning up any minute now. I'm just click that. Right, and we got Mr. Johal on. Is that you, Mr. Johal?
Can you see me?
Yeah, he's coming on now.
Have you gone? Are you there, sir?
There we go.
Are you there, sir?
I am indeed.
Is that Ninder Singh?
Is
that Mr. Ninder Singh Johal?
Yeah, good morning to you.
How are you doing, sir? Good morning.
Sat Sri Akal ji.
Sat Sri Akal ji. Finally, we got in. Technical issues, but we managed to get in.
Yeah, great, great. Right, we've got a very special guest on this morning on the drive time, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. with Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, or the ICSA if he can't use his other hand. Have you got both hands available today, Lakhi, or is it just the one hand?
Both hands today, actually. Yeah.
Excellent. The fixer then today, Lakhi Singh, the fixer, and we've got a special guest on today, Mr. We have an echo going on for some reason. I'm not sure why that's happening. So we've got Mr. Ninder Singh Johal, who is anyhow Mr. Ninder Singh Johal, who happens to be a serious mover and shaker of the West Midlands community, a gentleman who has a production company, who has got quite a few acclaimed music tracks to his name. I've heard of the Black Tie event, the Signature event, and there's a third one which I'm not quite familiar with. I'm going to ask Mr. Johal when he presents his credentials as to explain what the third one, because I couldn't understand what that was.
They're called the
typed out.
natural awards. Natural awards.
Is it called the natural award or natural award? Because it's spelled
Natural.
NAC. Is it natural? So it's obviously somebody spelling it wrong. The natural awards. Okay.
Well,
So
well,
I'm not.
Salim, for a second, I think. Go on.
Yeah, NACH in Punjabi means to dance. So
Yeah, that's right. That's why I thought it was natural.
Yeah, natural.
Yes. So it is natural. Okay,
Yeah.
natural awards. Okay. We've got Lakhi Singh obviously to intervene whenever we need someone to butt in while we're talking. But leaving that, that's him fixing the problem. But for now, I'm not going to do any injustice to Mr. Johal by making mistakes about his long accolade of events and achievements. I've heard through the grapevine that you are is it a deputy, is it a deputy mayor, is it, or lord? That's right, deputy lord, lieutenant, which is something new for me. So I'm not sure what that is, but you're going to give us that introduction, I hope, and explain to us what a deputy Lord Lieutenant does. Yes, Deputy Lord Lieutenant. What do they do? And are you commissioned? And do you carry a sword? So, Mr. Nindra, yours to take over, please, sir. Give us your background and tell us about yourself and your escapades.
Yeah, so my background that I did my first degree in finance in Leeds, and then I wanted to become an accountant. But 18 interviews later, I discovered accountancy didn't want me. So I then went to do something called an MBA, a Master of Business Administration. And from there, I got into consultancy. And from there, I had a passion for music. I enjoyed playing tabla. So I set up a band called Achanak.
Achanak?
Yeah, and the band...
You mean like all of a sudden?
Sorry?
Achanak as in all of a sudden?
All of a sudden. And the band started to do well. So I thought, well, this music thing's pretty good. And that's when I got my first taste of entrepreneurship. So I set up a record company called Natural Records. And I signed a number of artists. And we played all around the world. Played with Fatboy Slim, Tom Jones, Prodigy. We did all the big shows in all around Europe. And I was signing artists, and one such artist was Punjabi MC. And the music you heard Lakhi Singh just a few minutes ago.
Did you just sing something a few minutes ago? Is that you, Lakhi?
That's Lakhi.
Is that you?
That's Lakhi.
It's not me. I think it's probably, I reckon it's Ninda.
I reckon it's Mr. Nindra. He's making those vibes.
Yeah, so I always had a dream that one day Bhangra music would cross into the mainstream charts, and of course nobody believed that. They said that's impossible because it's a melody that's sung in Punjabi, the instrumentation is Indian, and the vocals are Punjabi. Why would anybody want to buy a track like that? So it took me 10 years to convince the mainstream market that Bhangra should be taken seriously, and then of course.
So could I ask? I don't mean to butt in. Were you around at the time of Apache Indian? Is that before or after you?
That's right. Apache Indian I know very well. He's from my neck of the woods. And
okay, so he is from your neck of the woods, but was he before or after you started your...
It was around the
same time.
Around the same
and did you sign him up as well?
No, he was signed to Island Records.
Okay.
So he was slightly before. I think it was about a couple of years before we got into, before I got into sort of the music industry. And then, of course, with Mundia Tabachke, we were at number 5 in the UK. Jay-Z then featured, and we got into American charts at number 7. We had 9 number 1s, including Italy, where we knocked off Ronan Keating. We sold in every We sold in every territory, and we went number 2 in Germany. I think we sold 750,000 records. It was silly figures. We were the number 1 ringtone in Japan. We did the music was featured in a lot of Hollywood movies. Dictator is one if you watch the movie. MTV Awards, and then if you saw recently an ad featuring a lizard and the music in the background, that was us licensed the music. So yeah, it was
excellent.
I became the first British Asian record company to have a number 5 and 9 number 1s around the world.
Excellent. I mean, I am humble, and I am obviously gobsmacked for words today. I don't think I'm going to be able to cross that in my humor either, but I will attempt because I'm very thick-skinned. So, moving on from all of that which you've done. So, what is this Lord or Deputy Lord Lieutenant? What's this about?
Okay, so for music, I then set up, and this will be interesting. I have a little property company as well, so we invest in commercial property, industrial, and then we started to move into event production. And then whilst I was doing event production, and we spoke about the awards, I joined a number of boards. So I sit on something called the Black Country LEP, which is Local Enterprise Partnership. And that.
All right, the Black Country. Are you from the Black Country? Are you,
right.
Mr. Johel?
That's right. And then that statutory body is government backed. We then allocate funds to the right businesses and the right infrastructure, like digital infrastructure, physical infrastructure, to make sure businesses within that region flourish, create employment, and create prosperity, and of course wealth creation. And from there, I've sat on something called the West Midlands Combined Authority, which is a much bigger. It looks after the whole of the West Midlands. So that's where HS2 comes in. And HS2, as I heard you speak before, can determine price values of property. Because if there's a demand down to infrastructure, the better a region has infrastructure, you tend to get more inward investment, more people. As more people move into an area, more businesses grow up. The demand for houses, demand for property goes up. So anybody in property needs to understand how the economies work in both globally, nationally, and regionally, because even within a region, prices can change depending on demand, and of course education and industry. So from there, I've been on the Wolverhampton University Board. So I'm a governor at the university.
All right.
Yeah, Wolverhampton, which means we have a good understanding of the skills requirements. And again, that's part of if there's more skills, more demand, more people come into an area, more property is required. So it's all linked together. So I sit on that board. I'm also a board member of something called West Midlands 5G. And that's we're talking about 5. We've heard about the conspiracies, but 5G will allow so much development both within industry and
5G, you say?
5G. So we're at the cutting edge of 5G.
Oh, that's interesting. Just to stop you there, Nindra. Lakhi has an opinion about 5G. What do you think about 5G? Lakhi, does that bring in business and investment, or is it a pain in the head?
We can't hear him, can we?
Can you hear me now? Is that any better?
I think he wants to make
that. Basically, I'm not an expert on the topic, but there's a lot of conspiracy theories around 5G, which I think, no doubt, you probably heard of, Linda. So probably better to answer the question.
Okay, so you're not going to answer that question. Lakhi is to keep silent on the topic. Obviously, something to do with a conspiracy theory, I assume. Okay, Nindra. So 5G.
I can explain that. So, what happens with human beings is that when you're hit with an uncertainty, and the pandemic was an uncertainty, then you try and correlate that and blame something for it. So let me package So let me take you back to the railway age, when the railways were being set up in this country. At that time, the UK experienced an epidemic, not a pandemic, an epidemic, and everybody blamed, because they couldn't understand the epidemic, they blamed the railway stations and the railways, because that's the only thing they could connect with. Now, if for a second,
what was that? What was the epidemic? Which are you talking about?
I can't remember. It was around the railway. I can't remember, but it was around the railway age. It was around the railway age. And,
AIDS, you mean? Was it AIDS?
Railway age.
Okay, so railway age. So during the time the railways are being laid, what you're saying is there was a epidemic. We don't know what it was, but people were blaming the railway for it. Is that right?
So that's right. So now we have a pandemic. People need to blame something. So they're blaming 5G because to them they don't understand 5G. They don't understand. And so they put the.
But I mean, didn't they say that this pandemic was blamed on a Chinese food market? Isn't that the blame? Isn't that where they put the blame?
Well, at the moment, look, the World Health Organization doesn't seem to have an answer. There's people pointing fingers at all kinds of places. We're hearing all kinds of rumors as to how this emanated and where it originated, and simply we don't know. And around the 5G, of course, around the 5G.
But the president of America actually said it was created in a laboratory in China, and he's the president of America who has access to all of the security and agencies to give him that. And he actually said that it was created by the Chinese in a laboratory.
I don't have enough information. I'm not a scientist. I don't live in China. I don't live in America. And I'll wait till somebody officially tells us the source of the pandemic. I'm not at that level to explain. So I'm not going to hazard a guess. And as with 5G, if it was true, if there was a correlation between 5G and the pandemic, then Japan, which is very advanced in 5G, has one of the lowest death rates. Germany, and we all know Germany's coped well with the pandemic, that has a heavy penetration of 5G. So I'm afraid the two don't equate at all.
There's not enough evidence out there. Well, there we have it. We've got some factual insight as to those people who seem to feel 5G is going to electrocute people and that it is actually a covert operation to install new towers everywhere. So 5G has no serious damage to people. It's probably there's more damage in smoking, I think, and taking sugar and having.
I think for anybody who's interested in the economy and property, I would say to you, 5G will improve productivity. 5G will improve the health service. 5G will improve transport. 5G will improve infrastructure. 5G will allow the coordination of cities to work even closer together. If you take all those factors together, that will raise productivity, that will raise wealth. That means property prices in the economy will benefit. So really, we should be embracing 5G, because if you're in business and you're in property, if you embrace 5G, then those people will benefit indirectly from the creation of wealth.
Okay. Well, we've got some comments coming in, Nindra, from your excellent explanation of 5G and how it ties up. Danny says, wow to you, Nindra, about obviously your presentation and your accolades. We've got Sajal, as usual, this morning, the financial controller from London, who says hi. Hi, shout out to Sajal. And we have George, who says, amazing information. He's obviously impressed with the level of information that you have, Nindra, in commerce, especially being from the music. I think there's an impression. People probably think people from the music industry are probably a bit thick-headed. You're proving otherwise. So
thank you very much.
No, I'm saying it's quite refreshing, because they probably think everyone in music is a bit like Jay-Z. He's got nothing to say but moves his head a lot. But you've shown us differently.
So let me just add another thought to the process. So we've all been trained as people in business that we have much to learn from sport, and they're right. We have much to learn from sport. What sport does? Sport sets you a long-term strategy with a goal. So if you want to do the marathon in so many hours, you then have incremental steps. Just like in business, you incrementally grow. My argument now is long-term planning is great, but it becomes difficult in a very disruptive environment. And we are now in a very disruptive environment. And I'm talking about the pandemic. We potentially may be even more disruptive when Brexit comes through. We've only just recovered from the last disruption, which was the last recession. So my argument now is actually we all need to adopt a creative mindset, because a creative mindset is what gets you through disruption, not long-term planning, because long-term planning is great. But if you're in the midst of a chaos, it's your ability to creatively understand how to get out of that chaos, which then lends to long-term planning. So one of the things
excellent.
So I think one of the
excellent. Just 1 minute there. I just want everyone to realize an excellent tip coming from Ninder, creativity. So if you're in a business or you're managing your property portfolio, you need to look at creative ideas. And I think there are some creative ideas out there, like service rooms and rent to rent, etc. These have become the new landscape. But what Ninder is saying, creativity will get you out of the immediate miss because of the uncertainty. Is that what you're saying, Ninder?
Absolutely. And I say to people, and if you're from the music industry, then you're engineered to think creatively, because you have to come up with new melodies, new tunes. And it also means you become much more of a risk taker, because you take risks. So if you embrace risk taking, if you embrace creative thinking, and then align it to long-term thinking. So I'm not dismissing the sports analogy, but if you adopt all three and you're nimble and you think on a change perspective daily, then you're more likely to cope with chaos than you are if you're a rigid black and white thinker.
So what you mean to say is, Ninder, if you're wearing high heels and playing football and you're going to score a goal, it's best to do the goal in a fancy high flick back shoot rather than straightforward a penalty.
Well, I'm not sure I can even play. And somebody who's played football, I'm not sure high heels would work for me anyway, regardless of whatever route you take.
But if it was creative.
You need to be creative. You need to be open to all ideas, and you need to explore the impossible. And if you do that,
excellent,
then the possible is possible.
Okay, Lakhi Singh, the fixer. What is your take? We've moved away from 5G now, so obviously no comment on that. What is your take on what Ninder's saying? Is creativity the solution in a disruptive? And there's an admission there that we are in a disruptive market, a volatile, uncertain. Is creativity a way out? And are you also using creativity in the solutions that you provide for your clients?
I would say that that is probably critical to anybody's success in this market. But our mindset as an organization is always to be a step ahead of the game and be creative. So anything that we do is never copied, is always original. So for the last 15 years, the top 7 or 8 products and services that we've sold have always originated in-house. We've never really taken any traditional state agency work and did that as a matter of course, nor have we taken bridging finance as a matter of course, nor have we taken negotiating debt as a matter of course. So everything that we do is actually creative. So I think research and development and in large organizations going to be critical to their success, and they probably need to get more innovative. And I think if you're a more startup or a mid-tier type organization, like Ninder's saying, then you're blessed if you've already got that mindset. But if you're stuck in a traditional environment, such as a state agency with Rightmove, they've got a very traditional model, and in a very changing landscape where the market's tightening now, those sort of organizations, if they're not creative, they're going to be left way behind. A bit like a lot of the, I think there was a social media platform, I can't remember what it was called. It was a music one that used to be really big about 7, 8 years ago, but nobody actually uses it anymore. I think Ninda probably knows which one it is. It was like really, really big about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Yeah.
Look, I think I don't know how many people used to use the BlackBerry phone. I mean, the BlackBerry's now disappeared, and if you go to property now, the high street is decimated. There's a structural change going on. If you own a lot of retail real estate, what are you now going to do? If you're a landlord, you got most big retailers going to CVAs. How are you going to cope with that? Maybe you find a way to convert some of those into housing and accommodation. Look what's happened to Airbnb. They suddenly overnight saw all their sales slashed totally and people wanting refunds. So there's all of this, and of course, what does interest rates look like over the next
year? So Ninda, Ninda, I want to ask you a question. You said turning a high street retail shop into an accommodation or a house or a flat or whatever, and that's just all well and good, but the way the council and the local authorities operate, they're not exactly very flexible. I mean, they've already spent about 5-10 years sort of escalating the actual high streets, knocking out the public into the high street by creating parking charges, because they were just focused on collecting money revenues from parking and etc. You've got nobody on the high streets anymore because people don't want to come into town. Then you're saying in this environment, that creative ability also has to come with money. Now, a lot of retail, owners of retail units, etc., won't have that type of money available. So what do you suggest? Where can they go if they've got that creative stance about them? Because ultimately it's about money. They need money to make those changes. That creative adjustment is going to have to be affected by cash flow. How are you going to enjoy that? Have you got any advice for people on that?
Right, so two things. Firstly, local government are now having to accept that where they were getting a lot of rates from retail high streets, that's looking difficult. So local government are being squeezed by central government in terms of funding. So local government's going to have to be creative themselves. They're going to have to look at the street and ask themselves, what can we do to regenerate the high street or to sort out the housing shortage? So we have an issue. This is where somebody like Jenrick, who's the Home Secretary, the Secretary of Housing and Communities, is now trying to make the planning process much easier. So,
excellent.
Yep. So that's what they do now. We have come from a history of where private sector and the public sector haven't really worked closely together when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to housing, and when it comes to high street. The reason why there's a lot of CVAs is once landlords, there's a discrepancy between what landlords want and what retailers want. And on the other hand, we have an antiquated rating system that never really has understood what a business owner should be paying in terms of rates. So I think we need to overhaul the rating system. We need local government and national government to understand that business is important. And as for cash flow, if you want to go into property, that is no different to opening any other business. Every other business also has to deal with cash flow. And therefore, if you're entering a market segment or a business segment of some sort, then I've heard you use the word spreadsheets, raise money. Well, that applies to every business, whether it's property or not.
Okay, Ninda, what I want to ask you is, you asked a question yesterday. You've mentioned CVAs. So obviously that's a larger picture. And I think a lot of the stuff you're coming out with is going to go over the heads of a lot of listeners because they're not operating at your level. And I think, if I would be honest with you, you seem like half a politician, I think, and no longer that much of a musician or a producer. But leave that aside. My question is very simple. You've got CVAs and you've got the large retailers, large corporates becoming bankrupt.
Can you explain what the VJ sell?
Pardon?
Can you explain what CVA is to viewers? They may not know what that is.
Okay, thank you very much for the point. As I said to you, as always, Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, business fixer, is fixing me as well today, which is excellent. Yes. So what you've got is two particular types of voluntary arrangements. For a company or a corporate, it's CVA, and for an individual, it's called an IVA, which leads on to the question we had yesterday from Linda asking us, how can we help people get basically a write-off of all their fixed asset debt, so their actual negative equity debt? Well, this is something that Lakhi Singh is going to tell us, because I know Lakhi Singh's had lots of calls and contacts on the matter of writing off negative debt, which is really one of the USPs that Lakhi Singh, I think, promotes. So, Lakhi Singh, can you tell us, we're talking about CVA, and what is this new solution you come out, which is using an IVA to write off negative debt? What is that?
Okay, so basically what's happened, and a bit of background for you and for the community out there, we've been working and fighting the banks in relation to negative equity being a major phenomenon. In about 2008 time, there was over about 1.5 million people in negative equity, and we found that there's a massive problem. So at that time, we weren't necessarily fully prepared for the massive amount of buy-to-let landlords which had that problem, and we literally had thousands of clients contacting us. And what we did is I would say at the time, we didn't have our R&D in place, so we had 50% of the solution, and what we managed to win a lot of portfolios back for clients which were litigating with the banks with something called LPA receivership. LPA receivership is when somebody, their buy-to-let portfolio misses their payments, the banks literally take the properties over. They can keep them or sell them and collect the rents. So from that, we became the leading specialists with LPA receivership in the country, and probably one of the most hated people by the banks in the UK over that period. Now, what we found is that that was quite a reactive approach. We weren't able to get everything back for the client or write off their debts. So we've spent a lot of time being creative, going back to the point of being creative, and literally looking at every single angle, every single nook and cranny, even so much as to get about 10 barrister opinions on what we're doing. And we found a solution to the problem. So I would say we are the thought leaders in this space and in the solution. Now, what is the solution? How does it work? Basically, we're helping people with buy-to-let portfolios who've now overgeared. Their properties have gone into, they may have 10 properties, say 8 of them have gone into negative equity, 2 still may be okay, or they're borderline. We are in a position where we've helped over 1,000 people with those sort of problems over the last 18 months and written off their negative equity debt down to 0 and giving them a deed of settlement. The deed of settlement means that they can go back to their normal credit profile and continue their business and operate normally. Now,
okay, so hold on. A deed of settlement, is that the same as a full and final settlement that you get in unsecured borrowing, like when you have credit card and loans written off and you get a full and final set? Is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's yes, it's for secured debt rather than unsecured debt. But basically, it writes off.
So this is only going to apply to people who've got mortgages, and obviously negative equity, obviously meaning those which come from fixed charge debts. So you're saying you've got to, you're literally saying that instead, because I know a bit about the law on fixed charge debt, and it says that a bank officially can chase you up to 11 years if you owe them money from a mortgage debt. Is that correct, Lakhi?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. I think it's 12 years, but basically what we can do is we can write off the debt altogether in a 3 to 6 month period as our average time for the over 1,000 clients we've dealt with over the last 18 months. And I would say that can take up to 12 to 18 months if it's like you've got 500 properties and it's a very complicated case. But what we're doing is our level of creativity is that our objective is to probably help as many people out of homelessness, whether they're tenants or whether they're landlords. And I think we've managed to find the perfect balance between finding a solution for the tenants who usually suffer due to a landlord's inability to keep up with their finance, and then also the landlord suffering because they've been caught out either by interest rate hikes or cash flow problems because they haven't got any income from being furloughed, or in this market with the pandemic, the Brexit situation with the tightness in the economy, all of it's going to have a massive overspill. So basically, what's the process? What do we do? If you've got a buy-to-let portfolio, anything from one property going up to unlimited, could be 10, 20, 500, could be anywhere in the country. I've had a client literally come to me without disclosing too much information, based in London, who's got a portfolio of 20 million pounds of property which are in negative equity. You probably wouldn't believe that that's even possible. But that's actually occurred at that level. And last week I had a
Yeah.
Okay, that's a sign to say that I'm being too serious. I need to chill a bit. Okay. So we'll go back to sleep.
Okay, Lakhi, what you're doing is you're painting quite a dire picture, quite opposite to what we've just been getting from Linda, who's been talking about the beauty of HS2 and the fact that it brings inward investment and everything has to go through a change and there's a difficult market. But are you saying ultimately, the question to Linda is, what's going to happen when the interest rates go up? Okay, all well and good, inward investment, HS2, excellent, but isn't what Lakhi's doing, which is creative and forward thinking, isn't that being more practical than optimistic? And where do we strike the balance? Where do we get involved in potentially wanting to be upbeat, knowing that the interest rate, what are the interest rates at the moment, Lakhi Singh? Somewhere like, is it 0.5 or 0.75? Where are we?
0% from what I remember. Is that right, Linda? I think we're at 0%.
Linda, are we at 0, are we now? Or are we 0.25?
Well, look, we're pretty close at 0.
0. But what's going to happen when the interest rates go up, Linda?
Okay, so here we go. Look, for interest rates to go up, we need inflation. For inflation to go up means the economy starts to recover. Because you only get inflation where demand exceeds supply. In other words, more people are thinking, yeah. Now, we are officially in a recession. I tell you, I will be so happy if we're in a situation where the Bank of England feels compelled to raise interest rates, because it feels compelled to raise interest rates. It means inflation's gone up because prices of products have gone up, which sort of implies there's demand. Now, a couple of days ago, the Federal Reserve, which is the American bank, they've said we won't mind if inflation goes beyond 2%. So the target for the UK is 2%. Once you hit past 2%, the government starts to get worried about inflation and all the others. So,
but that happened about 3 years ago. They had an interest rate tracker, and they said if it goes beyond 2%, we're going to raise interest rates. And I think at that time, the governor of the Bank of England said, if you go, but then he also, 3 months later on, when he did go to 2.1%, turned around and said, well, it's all subject to other variations as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean we need to switch on interest rates. We have other levers. Isn't it all a bit wishy-washy? Because I remember one of the chancellors saying that the economy is choppy, but I have looked out for a definition of what choppy means. There's no financial definition of choppy. Unless, Lucky, do you know what choppy means?
Yeah, I think it's what they do in the butchers, isn't it?
Okay, so the forecast or the economy is choppy means the economy is in the butchers. Is that what you mean?
I think Linda probably has a better understanding of the
Linda,
economic.
coming back to you, sir. Tell us what's going to happen if interest rates do go up, irrespective of the fact people have got their eye on inflation. They will go up. That's inevitable because you can't go into negative unless they're going to try something else. I don't know, but that means you are at the bottom and there's only one way up. What happens when that goes up? What's going to happen then?
Okay, so I've heard Lakhi Singh say often times, make sure you got your numbers right. Make sure your spreadsheet looks okay. Now, what we do know, the current economic prediction is that interest rates will stay where they are roughly 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah. Anybody who runs a business should always factor in, they should always do what we call stress testing. They should always test that if interest rates go up by this percent, what does my cash flow look like? If it goes up by this percent, what does my cash flow? So you prepare a number of scenarios depending on what the future environment looks like.
Excellent.
If you proceed.
Excellent. So what you're saying is just, I don't want to cut you and I want to make sure everyone gets to understand. That's a very interesting tip for everyone. Keep your eye on the numbers. So stress test, you should do it at least how many times a year, Linda?
I think well, there's two things. I think first, my advice to anybody in business is always read as much as you can and understand the financial markets as much as you can, because they give you an indication globally of what's going to happen to you. There's always a bit of a lag, but it's coming your way. That's one thing. And secondly, I think you should be looking at your numbers on a weekly basis. Every weekend, you should spend a little half an hour, check your numbers. Are the numbers making sense? Because most people who go bust are the ones who don't keep an eye on their numbers. And numbers...
Okay. Ninda, now I want to flip over to Lucky because, okay, Ninda says keep your eye on the numbers, keep doing a stress test. How does that help people who are in negative equity, who have got interest rate only buy-to-lets, and they don't have the liquidity and they don't have enough equity, or their credit file's been spoiled because of the environment? How are these people going to be able to do what Ninda says?
Okay, so because this is I mean, basically this is going to be a critical point for them, because it's something that they've done in the past, which is they may not have control with their future because the numbers are out of their control. Because if interest rates go up or property prices fall, if they're checking what they're doing regularly, they'll probably find that best case their assets may be in not negative equity, but just covering themselves. So the value of the asset may be the same as the debt amount if the property prices fall. If they're in a very good area and like London or something, it may not happen as easily. Whereas if they're in outside London, a lot of areas been suffering from negative equity for such a long time, such as Newcastle, certain areas of Liverpool, Wales. So what those people have to do is they need to start being proactive and review what they're doing straight away, because they were living in hope before that they're going to get capital growth. So anybody that is living in hope with capital growth and just living on a minimum yield just to keep the portfolio going are the ones that need to do a sanity check now, because they may end up maybe paying more money every week and negatively, and they're throwing money into a black hole. So
that's probably one there. That's interesting, because I remember you saying once clients were coming to you who had 15, 20 properties, who were cash flowing, where all the flow of that cash was being pumped back into their portfolio with regulation, with all the requirements of maintenance and upkeeping. And they were literally making less money than had they gone back to their 9 to 5, and probably be making better clean money by just throwing the towel in and just starting again. That's where this unique solution you got made sense, because you were getting them into an IVA, out of it within 6 months to a year, and they were actually back in working life where other people. This was when the first crash happened. Is that right, Lakhi? Is that correct? Pardon?
That's probably about 75% accurate. It's actually worse than that, because that particular client I think you're referring to, we discussed, I think, only a few weeks ago. That client had 15 properties, and they had two.
You only dealt with one client, you mean? Just the one client?
That client that you're referring to had 15 properties, but 2 of them didn't have any debt on them at all. And this is the bit that you're gonna, Ninda, this is where what Ninda's saying actually makes so much sense. Ninda, you won't even believe this story. What the client did, he sold his 2 properties, and the money that he had, he used to actually keep plugging away at the portfolio about 5 years ago. And then what happened is that 200,000 or so cash that he got out went down to pretty much a zero after 5 years. So literally, he's been throwing 30,000-40,000 pounds a year at his properties, but the yield is only break even. The profit is only break even. So now, Ninda, this is the type of situation that's been happening in a average market, or you could sort of say fairly buoyant market over the last 5 years. This is a client in not in London, but in the out of London, in the northeast in Newcastle. Now, that's what's happening now. Can you imagine what's going to happen 12 months from now when the stamp duty actually is literally taken away like that?
Lakhi Singh, I'm sorry to say, but I'm having bowel movements because of what you're saying, which is not good. So I'm going to have a little break and give a couple of shout outs. Bob Singh, hi, sorry it took me a while. Very serious topics going on, interesting information, 2 spectrums meeting at the same point. We've also got Marcus, who says, referring on to Ninda's point, says that the way the high street rates are being structured kills the ability for people to actually open shops up. In any case, if they're trying to revive the traditional high street. And Barry says, what does Barry say about Lakhi's turban? Apparently thinks it's really cool. Denny, sorry, not Barry, Denny, that's right. Okay. Ninda, before we get caught up in Lakhi's predictions, which are giving me bowel movements, tell me, is there a light at the end of the tunnel with these people who've got negative properties? They haven't got any equity in them. Just give an example of someone who sold good properties to pay bad properties, basically throwing good money after bad money. How can someone in that condition get out of the problem? Because I know we can look at things top downwards from the government, from general policies, macroeconomics, all that, those sexy words. Tell me, 5G, Mr. X, down the road, living in Handsworth Wood, he's got 20 properties, all negatively geared. He's only surviving because the cash flow allows him to, because the interest rates are low. When the interest rates go up and he gets to break even and plus, he's going to be pumping money from his pocket to keep those portfolios. What does he do now to get himself out of the problem? And he's got no money, he hasn't got money sloshing around because the equity has all been eaten up by the reduction in the values of these properties. How does he get out of this problem?
Right, so the 2 things. Firstly, when you invest, you invest into an asset class. So you can either keep it in the bank, where interest rates are terrible. You can either put it in the stock market. You can either put it into your business, or you can put it into some other asset class like property. Most people decide where to deposit the money into an asset depending on what they're looking for. So they could be looking for income, or they could be looking for capital growth. It's when you talk about negative equity, that only happens when you liquidate a property, a asset class. It only becomes negative on liquidation. Until that point, it's a paper loss. So the question to ask anybody who's investing is, are they looking for income, in which case the asset class value is irrelevant because it's just a paper gain or a paper loss. So when I liquidate my shareholdings in company A or B on the stock market, that only becomes important on the moment of sale. What the price is today and tomorrow is irrelevant because it's for the long term. So I think whoever went in for capital growth must have made some assumption of how long they were going to hold on to that asset class and when they were looking to liquidate. Now, if currently they're in a negative, so in other words, the price they bought at is more than what you can sell at, you only have two options. If you're desperate and you're in distress, you're going to have to liquidate at a loss. Or if you bought it for long term, then wait till the value goes up in the long term. And at that point, you feel you can liquidate, you can do so. Your decision to liquidate is your decision. And
right, okay. So, Ninda, the way you're looking at it is that the trigger on liquidation is in the control of the vendor or the owner. But if you look into the details that we have on file, a bit of research we've done before we rang you through because we knew you were an expert in property, there are terms and conditions on all of these properties. Each lender gives you a mortgage based upon certain terms. Technically, all of these portfolios are in breach, if not in default, of their mortgage terms because they have breached the loan to value clause, which means that they don't have that luxury of deciding when they like. They all want to hold on to them because they're making good income from the yield. The question is that you're talking about capital growth, which Lakhi just said isn't on the cards, it's not worked, against offloading. But if you're already in default, the bank has a control. And this is where that LPA, you call them the LPA, is it the LPA receivers, Lakhi? These are those people who can just literally walk in, take control of your properties, and they don't need to go to court. Is that right, Lakhi?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be potentially, could be really, really, let's just say blood on the streets type situation.
Right, I need to put myself on mute so I can break wind because that's a bit too much information. Okay, come back. Yeah, what did you say?
I think being the property fixer, I am actually probably not necessarily the most liked of people in the market because, as Vijay Sal will know, I used to go out and do various talks. Not many people actually wanted to hear anything that I had to say. So I was treated a little bit like a leper in the property community because it's all about possibly talking up the market because then you can sell products and services. But I've always been, our organization and our team have always been very much focused on keeping business first and then property. And because of that, I think now people are beginning to realize that a lot of things that we've been saying, doing, researching, the creative part of what we're doing are probably going to be the best thing for them to be doing going forward to make sure that they're in sync with what they really need to do as opposed to what they've been. Yeah. So
okay, so Ninda, okay, I'm going to come back to you, Ninda, because you said the control of that decision, wanting to get out of a certain asset class, liquidate, move your money over. If the liquidity means trouble, because the bank's going to pursue you up till 12 years, So it's not like the normal Statutory and Limitations Act, where they've only got 6 years, and if they don't chase you in 6 years, you're scot-free. 12 years, whew, long time. 12 years, and they can chase you for that negative debt. What advice do you give to these people who are stuck? Because they can't wait for capital growth. It's not going to happen. And interest rates are low. But okay, let's suppose interest rates don't go up for 2 years. They will go up for 2 years. Are you saying capital growth is going to come back in 2 years?
Again, depends on the asset class you've got. It depends where that asset class is located. Is it in a hot spot, or is it in a part of the country where property prices are going down? I always argue to anybody that you should have a diversified portfolio of asset classes, because assets go up and down depending on the asset class. So, for example, I referred earlier, I have a small commercial portfolio. I also have my own business, so that's another asset class. I have some money in cash, so that if I need to support or make an acquisition, I've got ready liquidity. I've also got investments in the stock market, because the stock market, particularly at its where it is now, will hopefully in the long term will go up. But in each of those instances, I've taken a long-term view, and each of those are set up for long term. And each of them.
Okay, so do you have a mix though in then how you do that? You said the stock market is going to go up, but surely doesn't the stock market go up when the interest rates go up?
It depends. Listen, there's a number of factors. So it depends on oil price. So oil price is a determinant, because we buy and sell oil. It depends on consumer confidence. It depends on, and if you look at the FTSE 100, or certainly in America, there's been a very frothy market, because the tech companies, because we've all been sitting at home and buying all our products from home. So all the tech companies have done well. And really, when you invest, and particularly in property, I know you talk about flipping, you buy something, flip it over the day after. But I think you need to be very agile to be able to flip like that. You need to have a real good understanding of the marketplace to be able to flip like that. And you need to anticipate where the market's going, particularly short term. But most people, I always find, when they purchase assets, they generally purchase for the long term. Yeah, and I think you need to be stress testing your figures. You need to have a long-term perspective. You need to be creative. You need to be agile. And you need to be able to move quickly. And I think...
Okay, excellent advice again from Ninda. I think, Ninda, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be because we're in the last 2 minutes. Ninda, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to be cheeky and ask someone royalty like as you are, Your Royal Highness, would you like to attend another drive time? Because I think there's too much information you've got, and I think a lot of people are going to be sitting on their seats wanting to know more. Would it be cheeky of me to ask you to come back next week again for another drive time session?
Not a problem. In the meantime, a new magazine we've just come out with called The Business Influencer. I don't know if I get the angle right here.
Yes, I was going to cover that next time. I'm going to go into that in detail, because we've got something that Lakhi Singh obviously we're talking about. We haven't been able to discuss it. We're going to tie both up. So can we get a pledge from you? Because I know listeners have asked lots of questions. I'm going to apologize to all those who've been listening and sending questions. The reason being, the topic is really hot today, and I think I've got the runs. So we're going to leave all those clever questions for next week, and I'm going to try and get some advanced questions for you, Ninda, and we're going to discuss this business. Is it called a business journal? Is it? What's it called?
It's the Business Influencer. Let me get it. Here we go. It's the Business Influencer. It's a new magazine we're putting out next week. And
excellent.
Copy. It's full of knowledge. Knowledge is key. Knowledge is
exactly. I'm going to tap into you next week. If we can get a date, we'll ask someone to give you a call through and book that. We're going to discuss the business journal and also, pardon?
The Business Influencer magazine.
That's it, the Business Influencer. Sorry about that, I'm a bit thick in that sense. Business Influencer. We have Lakhi Singh next week. We'll take a date off. You're going to continue this because there's too much to talk about and not enough time. How many Harry Williams, shout out. Sorry about that. We missed you. 30 seconds left. Right. Harry Williams is going to be our guest on Monday for the drive times. A big shout out to you. Ninda, I want to continue this conversation with you next week. It's not enough. You're too much royalty. We need to have you on here more often. Lakhi Singh, the property fixer as usual, fixing things for everyone. Very interesting topic. I think a lot of people are going to want to be sniffing this solution you've got, and not you, obviously, but the solution. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. See you next week. Drive time, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Thank you so much, Ninda, for coming on. Lakhi Singh, take care.
Thank you, guys.